Um, I was still serving in the armed forces at the time, so I went to to Headley Court, which was kind of defence rehabilitation centre, month in, month out. But while I was in Stanmore, I knew I was never going to go back into uniform. I was never going to have the same. I was never going to be able to do the job I was supposed to do. And although I would have been looked after, it's very hard when there are only 3 buildings in the Ministry of Defence that are wheelchair friendly. So you're limited all of a sudden. And I didn't want pity, and I didn't want people to think, well, you know, it's just a different environment. It would have worked, I'm sure, and it has done for many. But I was very lucky that I was injured when I was 36 and not when I was 18, 19. So I felt I had this amazing career. Sorry, for me, my apologies. And but I felt it was time to move on, to move forward. So I retired in 2010. But prior to that, when I was in hospital, I was visited by lots of people, and I just got a sense from some that I almost felt, what have I got to offer here? There's also the piece around self-esteem and self-worth of never having had a disability and not knowing very much about any disability or medical condition. I was a little bit of a rabbit in the headlights, but I didn't want to be written off. So I thought, well, I'll raise money. I'll do what I can do at that time. And it was just through meeting or being introduced to people that said, do you fancy doing this? So the plan was to wheelchair push in the 2009 London Marathon. And I was still a wheelchair user for about, I suppose, roughly a year. But I was also then learning to walk again with the limited mobility that I had. And I had been introduced to somebody who was assisting around that with the race wheelchair piece, because you can only take part in the London Marathon as a wheelchair user, race wheelchair, if you have completed a half or full marathon before, round timings. It's professional, elite sport, although if you are able-bodied, you can dress as a chicken and take as long as you want. So it's a little bit kind of... but also, race wheelchair is very hard. I'm quite tall, and you have to, the way you have to tuck your lower limbs in, it was really quite challenging. And also, because I was learning to walk again, it's really hard that you've relied upon being a wheelchair user for a short period of time, but being encouraged not to use it so much, and then to be taking part in a wheelchair event made me feel a little bit uneasy. So my consultant, a remarkable lady called Angela Gall at Stanmore Hospital, said, if we limit you to walking 2 miles a day, then I think that then take part. And then London Marathon agreed to that at the time, in 2009. And that's how that London Marathon took place in the April. Prior to that, I rode the English Channel with a guy called Al Humphreys, just the most incredible man who we both thought we had experience of rowing. And then only 2 weeks before, we realised that neither of us did. We were up in Docklands with an ocean rowboat, and I was struggling to work out not how to put the oar in the water, but actually kind of like the equipment. And I asked Al this question, and he said, yeah, you are joking. I went, no, Al, I've never been in this before. And there was a gentleman called Simon Goody, who was the Paralympic GB British rowing coach, and said, when are you doing your sort of trip to France? He said, like 10 days. And he was just like, this is terrible. And it's also very interesting that you have to take insurance out, because if you raise money for a charity and it goes wrong and you're rescued, it doesn't look good on the charity. So it's interesting how everybody wants to distance themselves when you start to put elements of thrill or danger in the way. But Al is one of the most calming people, and I just felt we'd kind of been thrown together in a way, or introduced, but it was the way he understood and really checked me and looked after me, temperature regulation, what I was wearing, and is there anything I needed, and all those different things. And it was hard. We'd kind of blown 6 miles off course, and it took a lot longer than we thought it was going to. And tankers, although we have a right-of-way, clearly you're going to let a tanker go by. So it's just really interesting how I was just, again, like rabbit in the headlight, but it was good fun. But doing something with someone else, just feeling part of a team in a way, was felt very rewarding, and Al gave me a lot of self-confidence back. And then after the London Marathon, I had been introduced to a big wall climber called Andy Kirkpatrick. And a few years prior to this, with an extraordinary lady called Karen Dark. I don't know if you saw, I think it could have been London Paralympics. 2 wheelchair athletes crossed the line together. They were great friends. One came third, one came fourth. It wasn't quite on the line together. And Karen was one of those athletes. And Karen had scaled El Capitan in a very similar way than I had done. Or in a way, exactly the same way, actually, that I had done. So with a team of climbers who kind of scale El Capitan like spiders, each little leg of that journey up is a pitch. So they go up and they hammer in, and I was in a paragliding seat with the ropes going through, with a pulley on the rope, and then you're basically just waiting for them, pull, and then you come up, and then stop, and then this sort of thing. So it took about 3.5 days on the side of the mountain. I don't have vertigo, but I do have edge fear. I didn't. As you're going up, you're like, this is really pretty, and that's a nice view. But then in the mornings, when you've spent the night on it's almost like a little cot bed on the side of the mountain. It's interesting how I always wanted to be the one closer to the mountain, which makes no sense at all. Although everyone said you just want to be spooned, but because you're like, there's 2 of you. But it was then leaving that in the morning to swing out, I found it a little bit hard. And they said, we're going to just change the ropes around. What does that mean? Just don't worry about it. But what's interesting is how much you put your faith into other people as part of a team. And again, how they were just amazing, just incredible to have the patience to enable me to do something with my disability. Because I found it over the years when I've done different challenges, I take a little bit longer. And when people are standing around, they get a little bit colder. Like the London Marathon, when you do a 26 mile over 2 weeks, when everyone's run around the first corner, the roads are opened again. So you're back to the pavement. There's no one there going, well done, Phil. It's just it's a bit quiet, as you're going around. But I've always had people with me, friends and family and work colleagues and things like that. So I feel that sometimes when you're talking about the physical challenges, there is always a team behind everything that I've done. So that was 2009. 2010, and on the back of that, I had then been asked to be a patron ambassador to different charities, NSPCC, Team Go, UK Scouting, the Prince's Trust, a number of charities like Cardiac Risk in the Young, the Helen Rollison Cancer Charity. So I was kind of used a bit more of as an outdoorsy type of ambassador with a bit of an inclusivity angle, I guess. And it was interesting how many of the people that they supported were young adults. And how do they help, and what activities do they put on to make it inclusive for young people of all abilities? And I hadn't seen any of this before, so it's all very well doing something like a London Marathon and getting permission to do it, but not everyone gets permission to do it. So that's not particularly inclusive. So suddenly you're thinking, if you do El Capitan, it costs money, you need sponsorship. So whenever you do a sponsored event, and people say, well, would you donate? Well, how much money is going to that charity? Or are we paying you £5,000 for flight out to the States to do something that you want to do before you've raised any money for the charity? So and people want to know where their money goes. They want to know it's going to the charity. So this was a real learning curve for me of, wanting people to support who I was raising money for, causes, and then people get fundraising fatigue. And over the years, fundraising has changed completely because no one carries cash really anymore. No one's really shaking a tin to then collect that, particularly pandemic. One can understand how it's changed. It's been a game changer, really. So 2010, I did the London Marathon again in 26 hours, but I did it for 26 charities, and I asked a young ambassador from the charity with their family if they'd like to do a mile. So I could learn more about some of the charities like Scope, which I didn't know anything about, RNIB. Just so I can understand more about disability, and from someone who was an ambassador who was able to communicate some of the challenges that young adults face. So that was incredible, and also it was tough, but when you've got a young ambassador with you, I sort of, every time I was flagging a bit, then they had all this boundless energy at 2 in the morning, and I was just trying to really like put my game face on to be, not to be happy, but to engage, you know. So they all really helped me get to the end of that marathon. And what really changed, I think, was I've worked with lots of charities, and I feel that if I was going to be that was going to be my life, then how does that work? Like, how do I live? And then what am I learning that I feel are the ways I want to be involved in charity work? And I never really wanted to have my own charity or start another charity. But when people want to give you money, then you've got to be very careful how you operate. So I founded the British Inspiration Trust and made a number of decisions. The first was I don't take a wage and haven't done since its inception, because if I'm asking people to volunteer, you have to be a volunteer, because people are going to say, well, so you want us to raise money for you. If I asked you all to raise money for the charity and you think, well, you know, enjoy dinner tonight in Southampton, it's not right. This doesn't feel right. Also, I don't employ any staff. And I don't have any overheads of an office. So for the next 5 years, the University of Chichester is the home of the charity. I don't really need an office because everyone always wants to meet you in a coffee shop anyway. So, and you can use the facilities. So it's just trying to not have to raise £300,000 a year before you've even started. And it would have been very challenging during the pandemic, and if I had an employed number of staff, I don't think I could have kept that going, and that's not right either. So going back to a few years, then in 2011, someone said, do you really understand young adult mental health in the UK? And I thought I kind of had a good idea from working with the different charities, but not UK-wide. And the only way to do that was to visit. And I thought, well, there's a bit about inclusivity and disability. I also need to look after my well-being, my physical health. So I did a challenge in 2012 where I was hosted in every county of the UK by a university or a college or a school or a charity or a community. And my apologies. Just double checking someone's okay, if anyone's observing online. Okay, it's a pleasure. 2012. So, yeah, I was hosted by different communities, but to visit every county of Wales, of Scotland, of England, New Jersey and Alderney, Guernsey, Isle of Man, because Highlands and Islands, Shetland, Orkney, because students and young adults living in every different county, there are so many different factors that are very different, and unless I understood that, the only way to do it was to go and spend time and listen. the challenges of being isolated in the Highlands and Islands, being a student but not being able to get onto campus because of inclement weather and ferries not running, and even more isolation. So there's all these different factors, cost of living, employment opportunities. So that was a year where I felt that it was just really important to really understand young adults and students, and it started getting me more involved in universities and colleges. That's kind of how this all kind of like was changing. But back to BRIT. So what was I going to do differently, and bringing it more to the now? I wanted to collaborate. I wanted to really understand how the education sector and to support students operates around well-being. So over quite a few years, I've been able to develop strategic relationships with Universities UK, the National Union of Students, Guild HE, Independent HE, and MOSHE, which is the Student Services governing body in higher education, Healthy Universities more recently, in tertiary in Scotland, CDN and Colleges Scotland, Colleges Wales, Association of Colleges, NAMS, which is the Student Services in Further Education, NatSpec, which is the voice of specialist colleges, so learners and students who have complex disabilities and learning difficulties. Because to me, a student is a student, that's it. But also how the charity has evolved to initially have wanted to support young adults who are struggling with physical and mental well-being, to now be about a charity that supports young adults, students, and staff. So over the years, things have really evolved because I've spent so much time out there sort of getting to know the sector. So without going to bore you completely, but what does that mean as a charity? So I drafted a 5-year strategy, 2024 to 2029, and shared it with all those education governing bodies to understand from student minds, if you are going to be part of the University Mental Health Charter, how can what you do to be involved in the charity support the modules of staff well-being, student engagement? Like, how can we kind of do something that layers? If you're working with local colleges and schools, could something like the BRIT Challenge, which I'll explain in a second, be a vehicle to support? If it's about EDI, then how does it work? If it's about supporting the student unions and the SAB officers who are doing welfare activities, community, is there something that can unite and everybody across the whole of this university, but also every university and college in the UK? So the BRIT Challenge, I don't know why I'm pointing at myself, weird. So the BRIT Challenge is an initiative. It's a free-to-take part in initiative that every university, college, and specialist college can participate in every single year. It's always themed on the year. So, and it's always takes part, arguably, every month could be gloomy, but the beginning of the year can be particularly gloomy. So it's always the first couple of months of the year. So this year, the 24th of January, 24th of March, it includes today, University Mental Health Day. It includes LGBT History Month as well. But also, it can be, there are so many different days that people want to celebrate. We'll actually celebrate those days as part of the BRIT Challenge. There are 3 elements to the BRIT Challenge, and this has evolved by listening to students and staff. So please don't think these are all my ideas. They're not. But if someone's got a good idea, then embrace it and share it, I think. So the first part of it is to encourage the delivery of 24 wellbeing activities, whatever you would want them to be. But I would ask that they're inclusive. So it's great to come up with a 5K fun run, but what about those that can't run, that then are excluded from taking part in something? So a 5K lunchtime activity that everyone can take part in enables everybody, students and staff of all abilities, to participate. So I've seen sort of like wheelchair basketball. Not all those players were wheelchair users, but it gave people understanding. Boccia, which is kind of like a bowling that's part of Special Olympics, and it's fun. It's really good fun. In fact, Trelaw College, which is down southeast, I'm going there to learn how to play. The learners are going to teach me how to play. But it's really inclusive and fun. So there's lots of different things, but it started off being physical well-being activity, and I've always wanted it to be well-being. So instead of it being team events, I know that Karen, the previous Vice-Chancellor, was painting in the foyer with students a couple of years ago as part of one of those activities. So there are many different activities you can participate in. That's the first part. The second part is 24 acts of kindness. Acts of kindness, not my idea, student ideas from around the UK. This is about social, about community engagement, but social action, and empowering students and staff to come up with 24 different acts of kindness. The way I cut it down is how many departments do you have at Solent, and how many sports teams and activities and clubs and societies? There's more than 24. So and also embracing their passion as well. But what it means is that if it is split across the whole university, then those departments and those staff members and students who might not necessarily get involved in something within the sports facilities can get involved in something. And also they get an understanding of the community, those that need support the most. It doesn't have to be huge, but an act of kindness is an act of kindness, a nice way to take part. And the third is fundraising. And I think as a non-paid charity CEO, people always say, it's another fundraiser. We've just done Movember, we've got sport relief, and there's something else coming. And so, as you know, I don't need to raise huge amounts of money to run the charity. There are a number of options for fundraising. The first is don't fundraise. No pressure, you don't have to if you don't want to. The second is if you want to raise funds for BRIT, that's awesome. If you want to raise funds for BRIT and another charity, that's awesome too. But if you want to raise funds for a local hospice, then do it. And use the BRIT Challenge as a way to do that. And I think in that way you're empowering the student union, you're empowering staff to decide who would they like to support the most. And I think that's the way it should be. So I've never wanted to run a charity, the British Inspiration Trust, to be treading on the toes of other charities, but that's why I work so closely with Samaritans and Student Minds and Papyrus Prevention of Young Suicide, because everyone is wanting to support student staff well-being, and I think it's really important to work together. I know that I'm almost getting a nudge. So there's a little bit there, and then I can do a little Q&A.
So we're just going to show, so before we talk today, we really love the people involved. We wanted to see what the university have been doing to sort of get involved with well-being and things like that. So
and just like Phil was talking about, it's that the university this week has been making sure in University Mental Health Week that they come up with activities and ideas which are inclusive to everyone, that everyone can take part in. And we went to this wellbeing cafe and body MOT session, which the university and the student union ran to discuss what they do, and it was really good fun actually.
Yeah, I loved it. So we've got a video to show you a little bit about it.
Do these wellbeing cafes if there's because it's University Mental Health Day on Thursday.
Yeah.
So we do this to kind of help to build awareness of our service, but generally students will self-refer into our service. So there's these QR codes that can be found all over the place, and it takes students through to a self-referral form that's got a few questions, and then we will book them in for an appointment with one of our team.
Oh, nice.
So it's very easy to access, and it's free and confidential.
I think what's good about this space is it's quite a low-key way for people to engage.
Yeah.
So instead of them maybe filling in a self-referral form, sometimes that can be a bit intimidating for some people. So actually to sit here and take part in an activity, have a sweet treat and just sort of sit back and relax is sort of a nice way to we're aware of some people that have come last year and then as a result sort of started to engage with therapy
Yeah.
And that's I think that's the good thing about this space is it's a different take on how to engage with the service.
Yeah.
Alongside the Wellbeing Cafe, there was the opportunity to undergo a body MOT. This is an excellent service available to all students, which is completely free. At the end of the check, you will be provided a receipt that will tell you various details and outcomes of your checkup. And no, you don't have to worry about eating a cheeky sweet treat just beforehand.
The last academic year, our team have been really aware of working to increase our visibility across the university. So, for example, we've been going into different classes, different lectures to talk about the service that we have, especially the third years kind of moving into exam periods. We'll just pop in, let them know what we've got on offer, the kind of things that we've got going on. And also we're kind of providing more preventative kind of workshops so that students can have skills to be able to support themselves before perhaps needing to reach out for support. So we've got a resilience skills training that we offer, and in that we'll talk about the different support that we've got on offer, the different events that we've got going on. So we try to go directly to students to let them know what's going on.
What Lauren said about a more proactive way of looking at mental health and well-being. Because if you change the context, you wouldn't have a bouncer at the door saying you can't come into the gym.
No, exactly.
You know, to actually to look at it in a different way, to be more proactive. And therapy is about not only emotional engagement, but it's about awareness, and doesn't want to work with someone to raise their awareness because it can improve your life, basically. So instead of, you know, a lot of people look at therapy in a problem-based way because our society has become quite problem-based, but actually to look at it in a different way, people can engage to support their time at university, enhance it, basically. So,
and it doesn't need to be reactive, so sometimes I think people might access therapy when they're already really struggling to cope, but it can also be something that can be quite preventative, so it can kind of build your awareness of what you can do to support yourself to prevent getting to a place where you're not able to cope and you're really struggling. So there's different types of support that we have on offer, and so in terms of choosing the therapist that you want, so when a self-referral comes in, we'll work to match a person's need with perhaps the skills that the therapist holds. So it might be that somebody needs something more like cognitive behavioural therapy, and we would work to match that person with that therapist with those skills. So we try to meet the students' therapeutic needs. And in terms of choosing a therapist, so we do offer the students, so generally, initially, we'll offer a single session of therapy, and that's one of our main forms of support in the service, which is kind of therapy. It's really flexible, it's kind of sessions one at a time, as and when the person needs a session. And that person can ask the same therapist again if it feels helpful. And we can't absolutely 100% guarantee that, but we will always work to meet a student's preferences and needs. It's really important.
But I wanted to ask you, Phil, how do you think universities can do more in the years ahead?
I know it wasn't a loaded question, but I was just thinking, what should I say next?
There you go.
Because sometimes I'm not part of the university and I can say what I want, within reason, obviously. And I don't want to embarrass in any way at all. All I can talk about is some of the great ideas. So, and I'm trying to be as diplomatic as I can, but if you don't say things and share ideas, then so staff well-being, a whole university approach. Students are encouraged to volunteer and get involved in the community. I think it would be wonderful if staff were given a day, a year, to get involved in something in the community, charitable cause, as groups or as individuals. But it'd be interesting to know who does already, because there will be so many people who get involved in community causes and charities. But I'm a volunteer and I work in the charity sector, so I'm sorry to say it, but I think staff volunteering, it can make you feel it can improve your well-being. It will improve those that you support, but it does improve. I think a paid day, one day, just to bring everyone together. And if you do it already, I'm really sorry, but that would be a way. I would think it would be wonderful that every university and college did that.
We actually do a day, and we've got a session this afternoon all about volunteering and how it's good for your mental health and well-being.
Amazing.
Staff.
I think it's I see the best of, and then I think that's a great idea, and I want to share it. So I think that's just one way that unis and colleges. This is a long answer, and I'm really
Don't
sorry.
worry, you keep talking.
But it's
That's why
obviously
you're here.
40% of universities are in debt at the moment. That means that there's going to be changes to staff. That means that existing staff will get more work and responsibilities that puts additional pressure and stress and anxiety on them. So sometimes when I'm engaging, I do find, Phil, we haven't got the capacity. So I have to think how I can make this more engaging. Today is a perfect example of something that's been student-led. So with the BRIT Challenge, people will say we just don't have the resource because you need a bit of comms support. Students are studying social media, communications. This could be something as part of a module that they get real lived experience at, of taking part in a work placement, but it would be taking part here, not with BRIT, because as you know, I don't have offices and I don't have the staff to do that, but I can come and deliver and talk to, like I'm doing with students at the University of Chichester. They're doing presentations at the end, but if it's part of the BRIT Challenge, then you have that support. Filmmaking, journalism, sport management or event management, business management. There are so many different areas that if there's a plan and you really wanted a team sat down to make it successful, the most successful university BRIT Challenge engagement has always been when it's VCs are engaged. Because if they give the nod, they'll probably give it to potentially someone within senior management, like Pro Vice Chancellor Student Experience type of person. Then you've got the lead that if you want to get those different departments and campuses involved, is leadership-led, it's coming from the top. But you also need comms support. You need HR for staff well-being, because there'll be a staff well-being strategy. You need a student body, you need welfare, student services. But if you get all those people around the table, it becomes really exciting. And then if you have the students that are involved in the BRIT Challenge as part of a module, that is a whole university approach to something like this. And with the BRIT Challenge, by the way, between January and March, you choose when you do it. Be it one day, 24 days this year, 25th of Jan to the 25th of March next year. It's there so that there's no pressure because of exams, student elections. There's always something going on in the diary. But if you can decide when you do it, I think what's exciting is if next year we can get Southampton to do it. South Hampshire College, I'm seeing this afternoon, they're taking part. New merger, 3 colleges. That's 5 institutions taking part. That becomes really exciting for Southampton because if it's acts of kindness, that could really support a lot of people in the community that need that additional support. I'm not a fundraising expert. It's just there's some great ideas out there.
What do you count as an act of kindness?
Well, that's interesting because so many student unions and universities are getting involved in environmental projects as well. And being on the coastline, I think that's probably lends itself a lot to the environment around here. So I think that's an act of kindness in the community to support perhaps a charity that's doing other things, but being bolstered by students and staff. I was at Walsall College on Tuesday morning where students, one of the things they like to do, or one of the well-being activities is 24 minutes of prayer. And the students have got the mosque that's opposite the college and the church involved, and they have been putting together 24 welfare packages for the mosque and this church to give out within the community. I think it could be anything people want it to be. I think what's great is not doing it in isolation, but getting other people involved. And I think and also you have perhaps a little bit more when you've got a team around you.
Yeah.
But I just think it can be internal. act of kindness can be checking in on someone on your course to make sure they're okay. You know, just making sure someone in your team is, I know it happens already, but an act of kindness is picking up the phone, family member, or just checking in on people. It doesn't have to be a huge gesture, but also how you measure things as well. I think you can measure things through volunteering in the community. It's hard to measure other things. It's tangent, sorry. I've
okay.
partnered with an organisation called Good for Me, Good for FE, set up by 3 college principals, free membership for FE colleges. They have a toolkit to measure social impact through volunteering, fundraising, and, well, actually, it started with food banks through the pandemic. The items were, so basically, you enter what you've been doing, and it tells you financially the social impact that your college has had in the community. Brilliant idea. I know I'm on camera and it's live streaming, but that'd be nice if the universities could have something like that, rather than have to create their own thing. I always think share best practice and make life easier for everyone else. And if you've got a great plan, great suicide prevention policy, share it, because it's not a competition. Everyone wants to be higher in the standings on different league tables, but not when it comes to staff and student wellbeing.
No, competitions are also normally causes sort of mental health issues.
Yeah.
Can be a big factor in it. So it's good that you're making it a really uncompetitive thing and getting a whole diverse range of people involved.
That's not to say, I couldn't say or nod and say there are universities that like to challenge each other, Winchester and Chichester, and then you know what it's like. So I can't say that varsity hasn't been part of some people's activity, or just a little bit of friendly competition from, so it does happen, but friendly competition rather than it's,
Wonderful. Before we pass the audience to the Q&A, is there anything else you'd like to share before we go to Q&A?
I can't, no.
Okay, well,
That's too much.
We'll go to the Q&A. I'll just grab the microphone.
No, it's
So
all right.
get some
Nathan's
questions
doing it.
ready.
Nathan's got it.
Nathan's got it, perfect.
I told you about this already. So if anyone just wants to put their hand up and go for it.
Don't be shy. There we go, there's one over there.
Just a quick question. Your previous training in forces before you had your university, did that assist in your recovery? Did those your training you had through the forces, did it assist you in order to adapt in life? In terms of your mental health?
No. No, because I think in certain professions in society sometimes talking about mental health can be seen as a weakness. And sometimes, you know, sometimes when I listen to Dame Kelly talk or just people talk about it openly, you just think, oh, goodness, you have. You know, because you'll get more people to talk about it. So, but it's a brave thing to do, to share. You know, once it's out there, it's out there. But I feel that when I was in hospital, I thought I've got this, but I was putting a face on of what people, you know, just people come to hospital and they want it to be an easy visit. They don't want it to be challenging. So you almost like say, how you doing? Brilliant, fine. It took me, I don't know, 6-7 years until I started to had some complications and I was internally and I wasn't getting out that often. So spending a lot of time on my own, and my consultant intervened and said, I think you need to have a chat. Never been under counselling before, thinking it was going to be about the injury. Went back to childhood, went back to all those different things. But so I talk very not openly about those things, but talk openly about the importance of talking. But I feel that I had come from a profession that perhaps didn't talk as much, and that's a challenge as well, because there's a leadership piece there and an expectation. I think you know, I was physically fit when I was injured, so that probably stood me in good stead. I like team spirit, collaboration, in looking after each other. I think there's things that have happened. The only thing that's different now is when I got told to do something, then I did it. And when I asked someone to do it, I had to be very careful. It's eye contact, isn't it? But when I gave an order, they do it. Whereas now, I'm in the sector where I'm trying to encourage gently volunteering, and I can't say, can you just get on with it? It can't be like that. So style of leadership or approach, completely different, because, just because, different communication. So some things are, it's a really hard one, because one can argue that it was taken away that whole life overnight, and that was the end of all of that. Do I miss it now? No, I have a more enriched life than I ever had before, in different ways. And it's not that I'm, trying to be positive, but I do. I work every single day with student unions and welfare officers and SAB officers and student services, and I would say more often than not, once I've got a relationship with the uni or college, the person I'm dealing with really cares about those students and staff, so they're a joy. It's hard though when you get a knockback and think, oh, why? Just give me half an hour. I ask for no more than that, and if I haven't got it right, I haven't got it right. So yeah, some things did, and some things perhaps a bit more vulnerable. So and it doesn't change. It doesn't. I think you learn on your journey, I guess. I don't know if I've answered the question really. But okay.
Cool. Any other questions? Phil, I've got a question for you. What was your hardest challenge in your own eyes? Physical challenge.
Got to really think about that.
You can't say them all either. You have to say one.
I wouldn't say any of them.
And how come?
Because when I was doing them, the people I had around me were, if we were in a very cold climate and I've got no temperature regulation, they're checking in on me. I've had my hands and feet in people's armpits and warmer places. Because it's cold, it's really cold. You just get on with it. Really, it's very, very weird thing to say. Just move on. But I find now is the hardest, actually, and the reason for that is I'm a bit wobbly, and I want to create the right impression. And it felt appropriate, not knowing who was going to be in the audience, that you go down the shirt and tie route, but I like being outdoors, and normally I've got my assistant's dog. So I can get away with wearing something which is more outdoorsy, because I've got Poppy with me, and I'll be walking her over the road and then bringing her back in here.
Poppy, your dog.
Poppy, my dog,
Yes.
yeah.
It's not just a child.
Where is she?
But then you have to wear the right. I can't walk very far in smart shoes because I'm wobbly, and then wearing socks and a tie. So when I go hot, I go hot. When I go cold, I go cold. Then you've got to catheterize and think about how much you're drinking, and then also, like no bowel function is, you've got to be, sort of leave at 6:30, 7 o'clock. You've got to be up an hour and a half, 2 hours before that to do that. There's the pain regulation, all those bits and pieces. So carry a bag at the back with all the things that, what if it goes wrong? What if something happens and it goes wrong? And you put another suit in the car, another change of clothes in the car. There's all these different things, and I can honestly say that I'm always really well looked after here. But sometimes people say, oh lovely, so you're going to finish at Solent at 12:30, get over us for 1:30. And then you're straight in, and then you think, well, how far is, and it's not that I want blue badge parking or parking, it's just, but it's a lot, and people don't see that.
No, do you think that's something that people need to realise more? But then it's a hard thing to force on people if they don't understand in the first place.
I think it's just, do I lead on it and say, look, it's easier for me. When I went to Birmingham Monday, I did like 5 uni college visits in that day. I overnighted nearby, I overnighted Birmingham, did Warsaw in the morning, came back. But every person I knew me. So I can say something. And I think it's just, when you're sort of like Teams calls and you're dealing with a new team and what does it mean? How many times have we emailed so that you knew I was comfortable enough to need anything, I knew the structure of the day, I knew everyone was going to be here. You've been here since 7:30 setting up everything this morning. It's kind of like it's seamless, it's just, it's not always like that. And I would say that sometimes there are visits and I think, train to London, I always drive. I've got everything in that car that I need. But if I get on a 2-hour train journey, no bathroom, then you don't drink, then you're dehydrated, all those little things. Then you get off the train and then you think, oh, it's only down the road, and then it's raining, and then you get there wet and you look really dishevelled, and people go, oh, coming to talk to and you just think, oh, this is a nightmare. So I'd say really the challenge is you know how challenging it's going to be. It's almost like being prepared for anything and having everything I need. And planning just takes a little bit longer, but people don't see that. And sometimes I get frustrated with myself that I can't.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you find it? Sorry. Do you find it hard to open up about that sort of thing to people?
No, I don't care. No, it's just I think sometimes you want to create the right impression. You want to do the right thing, but sometimes it's just sometimes hard. You know, I because you catheterize, because I catheterize, I can get bladder infections, urinary tract infections. They are not good for the brain. It's a chemical imbalance, and it can make you feel like, I mean, I can watch an advert and like with a puppy in it, and I'm in floods, like, what is going on? You know, I think actually it could be a UTI, and it normally is. Not that I cry at puppies, but I'm just saying.
Why wouldn't you?
You think, well, no, I wouldn't, yeah, absolutely. No, but it's like the emotions of things, really. It's just like I'm checking my emotions, and of course then, if you get a knockback on an email that's like, sorry, Phil, we're just not interested in anything you do, think, God, you could have phrased that in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes communication, like I know when I can feel more vulnerable. I don't mind talking about it. If I'm feeling vulnerable, not feeling 100%, feeling tired, you know, pre and post pandemic, I spent 6 months on the road. I don't claim expenses. I'm self-driving. You know, you go around every single uni and college in Scotland, and you get there, and I forgot you were coming. Like, oh, man. And I've overnighted, and then but it's just that communication.
Exactly.
Just to be kind, you know, I try my hardest to do that, but sometimes I think people have a busy day, but it doesn't take you another 30 seconds to phrase something in a gentle way.
Yeah.
Because we all read things like messages and think.
Exactly.
We've got a question over there. We still have about 5 minutes, yeah, we've still got some more time.
It's been really inspiring, thank you. And I wonder whether you've obviously overcome lots of challenges, and I wonder whether you can pinpoint a moment in time or something someone said to you at some point that really motivated you, because you're obviously really motivated. I wonder where that comes from, or whether there's something you could specifically pinpoint at the moment that's been really pivotal for you.
Yeah, there would have been. I might say, I might just throw it out there and then move on very quickly, because it would have been something that would have been hugely emotional moment, I guess. I think, like, why do you do what you do? Like, am I motivated? Yeah. Because there are many challenges around student and staff mental health, suicide prevention. So why wouldn't you do as much as you possibly? Why wouldn't you be like determined? So when someone says no, I almost think, don't say no. Don't. And it's not. I know I'm not for everybody. I get that, but I'm trying to find a way to deliver a free, be part of something that can actually take the pressure off of your students and staff in a different way, but bring people together. I know there's lots of ideas out there and lots of different things, but come on a journey. And if I've got it wrong, then help me better it in a way. So if I spend time, you meet a student and they're talking about something about the challenges that they face, it's hugely inspiring. You know, we're not massive on social media. It could be that's probably a mistake. But then if I spend time with students and staff who are struggling because of like online bullying and how they're made to feel about their body image or just like the negatives of that, then I don't want anything to do with it. I'd rather just like be in person and focus on that. So I mean, I am inspired constantly in my visits, but there have been some people, like my family have been amazing. My mum and dad have been incredible, my sister. I've had people who've stood by me and looked after me. Some of the words of encouragement from Dr. Angela Gall and the nursing staff at the hospital, like life-changing moments. Meeting a few people along the way, still do, that they have become incredible friends like incredible friends. I've met them through work. They're ambassadors of the charity, or they've been very supportive. But sometimes when people have belief in you, then that is massive. And it doesn't take that many words, but just that little bit of support goes a long way. So yeah, I know I'm not really answering the question because you set me off. I think actually, you know, because you've got. It's like sometimes people say, "How did you get injured?" And you think, got to go back to that moment and talk about it. But sometimes you have to prep yourself for that. Sometimes you can just wake up and think, "I hope I don't get that one today." I know it's going to come in the next question, but sometimes you gloss it a bit. But we were chatting about script, and I don't, you know, you're really patient with me. What are you going to talk about? I don't know. Because you have to look at the audience. If I
We
looked
tried
at you
so
and
hard.
thought, it's nothing, when there's no eye contact, or like people are not really, then you've got to change, you've got to move on. And if you've scripted with loads of slides, it's like you do it so many times that there's no emotion in it. You're just like talking at. And I don't want to, you know, so I think
It's much easier for people to connect with you.
Absolutely, I think so, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's all we've got time for. Phil, from us, thank you very much. It's been very inspiring.
Thank you for coming.
And we hope to do well in the next 2 years on Solent. So, yeah, can we give a round of applause for Phil, please?
Thank you. Thank you.
We will be taking Phil to do a sort of private interview, which will be on sort of social media, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But I think, Phil, you're staying for like half hour or so around the uni, are you? Or not?
I'm with you 11 till 12.
Yeah.
And then 12 till 1, there is a space somewhere. And
You're doing like a
we'll
walk and
find a
talk.
space,
Sort
yeah.
of.
like just saying hi and things
So
like that.
he'll be around the uni for the next couple of hours, just to let you know.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Brilliant. Again, thank you. Yeah, go on.
We've got a walk in the park at 12 o'clock.
There we go.
Outside the spa, so,
Oh, that could
Walk
have
in
been
the
it, yeah.
park, meet at the spa.
That was the one.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Thank you.